So the Institute for Independent Journalists is an education, professional development, and empowerment organization for independent journalists with a focus on financial and emotional sustainability for freelancers of color. I'm the founder, really excited to be with you. Ellen is also on the leadership team. You can go to our website, independentjournalists.org, to learn more about us. And we're just really thrilled to be here sharing, trying to make sure everyone has all the tools we need for a successful independent journalism. Our moderator today is the fabulous Ellen Lee, an independent journalist in the San Francisco Bay Area. She writes about kids, parenting, and the Asian American community, both past and present. Her work has appeared in publications such as the New York Times, Wirecutter, CNN, Real Simple, and many more. She's also the author of several Mad Libs, which are fun and amazing. I highly recommend the one about Lunar New Year. So thank you so much, Ellen. Take it away.
Thank you, Catherine, and thank you to our guests. We have a panel of amazing editors from amazing publications, and I'm actually going to just let them introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about who they are and the publication that they represent. So we'll just do this in alphabetical order, and so we'll start with Chelsea.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for introducing me, Ellen. I'm a senior editor at The Strategist. I manage our assistant files series where assistants of all kinds talk about all the weird and funny things they've had to buy for their bosses. And I also do a lot of our kitchen and dining coverage, editing that, as well as all of our, a lot of our This Thing's Incredible series, which is a collection of essays on single products that people love, as well as our Saw Something, Said Something column, where people just spot funny little details out in the wild and pull them out and report on like products they've seen in the backgrounds of like a celebrity's Instagram, little stuff like that. Thanks for having me today.
Thank you. I always get, people are always like, oh my God, I love The Strategist so much. And all the products.
Yeah. Love it.
Deblina, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Deblina Chakroborty. I am an editor for CNN Digital's features team, and I am the one editor who really regularly commissions and edits stories and projects across all features sections. So that includes science and wellness, style, and travel. And as time allows, I also lead content experiments like new franchises and newsletter series with the aim of really expanding CNN's audience and reach. And I'm glad to be here.
Thank you so much. And then we'll move over to Nikita.
Hi, thank you for having me here today. I am the editor of the New York Times real estate section. And thank you so much for having me. Looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
That's great. I love the New York Times, the Hunt section, which I believe you edit, right?
Actually, you know, I just kind of supervise, but there are two editors on that and they do a fine job. You know, I do advise on how we can expand it. We're actually looking at more like less expensive housing. So, and we have expanded nationally. We just had the Hunt Cleveland last week, which was very well received.
That's so great. I only get it right 30% of the time, I think, when I have to pick. Tekendra, can you introduce yourself too?
Hi, I'm Tekendra Parmar. I'm a tech editor at Business Insider, where I oversee our freelancers and contributors. That means that I work with wonderful folks like yourself as my predominant job. You know, we cover a range of things from, you know, beacon company coverage of big tech companies to as told to essays or first person essays to features or what we like to call holy shit journalism. Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you guys.
That's so cool. Thank you. Let's just go back to Chelsea then. Can you tell us a little bit more about what kind of pitches you get and what you're looking for?
Yeah, totally. So I think the top line answer to that is I love pitches that are just really smart and already have some degree of pre-reporting done, because I like to see, instead of, I think something some people might tend to do is make the question a pitch, which is not something I really look for. I'd rather have someone take it a step further and do some pre-reporting already and like kind of already answer the question before pitching me. But yeah, in that vein, just anything to do with really smart insider shopping intel, which I think is, the bread and butter of what we do at the Strategist. So anything that's just like a very clever trend you notice emerging. I think the keyword here is emerging, something that's like not yet blowing up in TikTok or, on Instagram. We like to say we were early on plants, which is kind of a funny thing to say, but something like that, like being ahead, like really ahead of the curve when it comes to like products and shopping. But yeah, other than that, I think specific rubrics, like having a look around the website is also really helpful, because we do have a lot of recurring series that we encourage people to pitch to. Like I mentioned, Saw Something, Said Something, and also our This Thing's Incredible essay series, as well as we do a celebrity interview series where we ask celebrities what they can't live without. So if you do happen to have like, a PR person reach out to you about a really exciting celebrity interview, that's a good fit for us. That's also up for grabs as well. Those are the main ones. But other than that, if there's anything that we just find exciting and like cool, like we love a little daisy chain. If you can find like, a book that's, all the rage in like South Brooklyn or something, you are able to figure out who patient zero is of that book, like that's amazing. So it doesn't necessarily have to fit into a certain rubric, just anything smart and reported on.
That's great. And it sounds like you take both reported and essays, like
Yes,
personal
for sure. Yeah,
experience.
This Thing's Incredible is our essay series. It's all first person. Yeah.
That's great. So many different ways you can contribute to the Strategist, it sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Deblina, can you tell us a little bit about CNN? It sounds like you oversee a lot of different sections, so it sounds like you might want different kinds of pitches.
Yeah, I mean, I same as Chelsea, I would say there's no specific rubric really. All the sections that I work across are really different. But I think if there's one common thread, it's that we're really looking kind of for the unexpected. CNN is obviously a very mainstream news organization and has a general interest audience. And our job in features is really to try to get them to engage more. So they're coming here for the breaking news. They're coming for to get that what is our bread and butter, but what are they going to stay for? What else are they going to find? And so we want to catch their attention with something that they didn't expect, not necessarily something that's like outlandish or off the wall, but maybe a fresh angle no one's thought of, a central character no one has heard of before, a little bit of unknown history, an emerging trend of some sort, things like that. And I promised I would not take up too much time going through all my sections. So I'll just say right now, specifically, we're definitely looking for people to write science. It's an area where we haven't had a lot of freelance contributors, not for any particular reason. We just haven't done it for some reason. But right now we just have a big demand. Our audience really loves science content, and we don't have enough bandwidth across our staff writers to meet it all. So we're looking for people who are comfortable with writing straightforward study stories, offbeat news, interesting profiles. And we love those stories where science and culture kind of meet and cross over. So kind of a broad range, but just not climate, because we have a separate climate team. So science stories, wellness, we're mostly looking for ideas to fuel our Life But Better sub-brand. And those verticals within that include food, fitness, sleep, relationships, which includes parenting, and mindfulness and stress. I think I got them all. Life But Better, kind of as the name suggests, we look to surface stories that it's really like service stories, ideas, science that can help people improve their lives. So that's what we're looking for there. And then style, I'm really looking for things for the art section, books especially, literature, memoir, art books, things like that. So those are sort of like the top things that I'm looking for at this moment.
Those are great tips, especially how you're looking for science stories. So that's wonderful. Do you take both personal essays and reported stories? But because it sounds mostly like reported stories.
It's mostly reported stories. We do some as told too. We will do kind of personal essays when it comes to parenting and some of our wellness, life but better topics. It's tricky for us because, again, we have an opinion section and sometimes things can veer that way. So even when we do personal essays, we love for it to have like a little bit of science to it or a little bit of reporting to it. But you know, like I said, there's not really a specific rubric or like you know, we're flexible. I think it depends on the story, the writer, the, you know, the person. If you have a really unique experience that you can share and also bring some reporting to it, then it's something that we can consider.
That's great. Nikita, can you tell us about the New York Times and the real estate section and what kind of stories you take there?
Sure. You know, I'm always just looking for the best stories. I mean, you know, I think people have a tendency to think of real estate as being very transactional, or, you know, I've tried to expand the idea of what real estate is. And to me, real estate is everywhere. It can be anything. And so I'm trying to get readers to wrap their brains around that, and for the folks who pitch us to do the same. And so we have a lot of different standing features. Obviously, the hunt is like one of our most popular features. And like I said, we are going national with that. And so we are looking for writers in other cities outside of New York. We're particularly interested in California, all parts of California, and then just anywhere. Like I said, you know, Cleveland might have seemed a little random. It was just something that happened. We're like, we're just gonna go for it. So definitely looking for folks to contribute to that. We're also expanding our international coverage going into 2023, and I'm looking for reported stories from anywhere in the world. Just something interesting, a trend, a narrative, a great profile. You know, I just love hearing from different voices, and that has been my, I guess you could say, one of my biggest priorities. As you know, being in this position, I've been in this position for about 10 months now, is expanding the voices in the real estate section. And we do take personal essays. I have run some. But we like them to be reported and well written. So happy to work with people. That's it.
That's awesome. So I'm so glad, because there are so many people here from all different parts of the United States and the world. So it's great that they can all contribute. Tekendra, can you tell us a little bit about the stories that you're looking for?
Yeah, so I got into it a little bit, but I'm looking for tech pitches on a range of things. A lot of the, like, how big tech companies are affecting people. Yes, we do have reporters that cover big tech companies, but these companies are massive. They're like countries. So like, if you have an interesting pitch that, you know, fits with what we do, I'm your guy to pitch that. We also take as told to stories, and these come in various different forms, but the sort of idea behind our as told to stories are they're essentially like a ghostwritten piece of a single source interview. They can take the form of a job diary, like I'm a content moderator for Facebook, or, you know, if it's not tech, like it could go as wild as I'm a Las Vegas model girl, which is one of our most successful stories. But they, you know, they can be personal essays, business stories, or any of those forms in the as told to format. I think this is a really great way for new freelancers to enter the sort of business insider cycle, because they're low touch stories. They're about 800 words. They can show us that you can write, that you can report in this very concise way. So yeah, if you're interested in what we're looking for in as told tos, I usually have a sort of pitch call out in the beginning of the month with the as told to ideas that I'm looking for. And like, that's really for freelancers that I haven't worked with before to be like, hey, I have this idea around this. Can you pitch me? Or can I pitch you? Sorry. Yeah, does that answer the question?
Yeah, that's great. I think maybe we'll go backwards now. And I'm going to ask, how does it work between juggling freelance pitches and staff? Like, for instance, because you probably have a beat reporter on like a Facebook or an Apple. So how do you navigate that? And as a someone who's pitching, how do you navigate that?
Yeah, so luckily for you guys at Insider, we have a freelance team that just handles freelance. So besides me, who works on tech, there's Elise Kalish, who'll take freelance reporters on basically every other vertical that's not tech. There's Jack Sommers in the UK. There's Debbie Strong, who directs everything. She's the head of freelance at Business Insider. So we have a page. I can link to it. You can pitch people according to what you're interested in writing about from that page. I will say that I actually do end up working with staff writers a lot because I also work on features or tech features for Insider, but my goal is to sort of balance those two things, and it's kind of on me. But I do take a lot more freelance pitches than maybe other editors that have like 2 or 3 reporters under them.
And then can I follow up on that and just ask, like, how does it work? Like, what if someone pitches a story that maybe a staff writer is currently working on or might be too similar? Or how does that work? I think there's always this like fear from a freelancer, like, oh, I'm pitching this story and someone else is gonna do it, and then I just didn't get to do it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like if a staff writer is working on it, there's not much you can do about that. There have been instances where Insider is a growing media company. We don't have a presence around the world, but like I can give you a good example when, Russia invaded Ukraine and there was this massive exodus of tech workers from Russia. We paired a freelancer up that was in country with a couple staff reporters that were based in the US and I believe maybe the UK that were covering the issue. And that's one way that you can add value to us is like, are you based in a country where big news is breaking and we don't have someone, reach out to me and we can work something out. But yeah, does that make sense?
It does make sense. Yeah, and I know that it's sometimes like on a story by story basis, and there are a lot of different nuance and situations. But I think that's always a question that freelancers have. Nikita, can I ask the same question? How does it work in terms of balancing staff, the stories that your staff is working on, and then what you get from pitches?
Yeah, surprisingly, the real estate section only has 3 full-time reporters, up from 2, up from 1 not too long ago. And so it is very dependent on freelancers. There has been a long time pool of freelancers. And like I said, when I came in, I wanted to expand the voices that I was seeing. I just wanted some fresh ideas and just fresh perspective. And so I have worked very hard to expand that pool. But, I'm mostly, I work a lot with freelancers. I am looking to have more of our cover stories done by our staffers, and I edit most of those. But, like I said, we have all of these standing features. Please read our real estate section. You'll see the different features and you'll quickly see, but I take a lot of off leads, and those are stories that might necessarily make the cover. But they are the strong stories. Our real estate section as a section is actually only for New York print subscribers. So that cover story, a lot of times it either has to be super duper interesting or it is based in New York. But, you know, like I said, other stories around the country. We had a story out of Marin County, California recently. And it was just as strong as our cover story. And, you know, those are considered off leads. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. It does. I didn't realize that there were 3 reporters at the New York Times for real estate. You always imagine there's like a whole fleet.
I know. I work at the New York Times, and I thought there was a whole fleet. And I was like, wait, that person's not on staff. Wait, this person is on staff. All these people are freelancers. Oh my goodness. And so, but that will also show you that if you know, you are interested in some of our features, it can be some very steady work for a freelancer. And I know how important that steady paycheck can be if it's the right fit and for us and for you. So, you know, please keep us in mind.
That's awesome. Really great. Deblina, can you tell us a little bit about how that works? Because I know CNN also has a big fleet of staff writers.
We do. I mean, our feature section is really small. People are always surprised, I think, to hear just how small we are across all of those sections that I mentioned. So we do depend a lot on freelancers too. And if you look at our budget from day to day, we always have, I think would say each story probably has at least 1 or 2 freelancer stories in the mix. That said, it is hard to balance both because as an editor, you have, you know, we have staff writers, we have people that we manage. And, you know, there's news that we cover, even though we're features, people always assume we're sort of like working ahead on things, but we're also covering a lot of news that's not like hard news, right? In all of our sections. So if there is something launching from the surface of the earth to outer space, then, you know, we're all sort of like circling around that too and covering it. But I would say that is why like we're a little bit more discerning with pitches and bringing people on, also because of the process, which I know we're going to talk more about process later, but the process of bringing people on is a little bit tedious. So we like to find people that we think are promising that we want to work with over and over again, because in a way those people become like, you know, not staff, but people that you can rely on to contribute things, who sort of get your style and your process, and you know, that you can go to over and over and over again. So there's never going to be a case, I think, where we can bring on like 100 new freelancers, because we just, I mean, like we are a global team. I'm already up there's like no more hours in the day for me to edit stuff. So, you know, I think that's definitely like always a challenge for us. We want all the stories, but we don't have all the time to edit things.
Yes, I sympathize with that, the feeling of wanting to do all the things and not being able to do all the things. Chelsea, can you tell us about how the Strategist works? Because I know that there are staffers there, and I always wonder, like, do they get first dibs on the newest beauty products, or how does that work in terms of pitching stories like that?
Yeah, totally. So kind of, yeah, like we, on a different facet of what we talked about earlier, like there are just so many products and we couldn't possibly try all of them. So there's definitely lots of room for, you know, if you've tried something super amazing that you're obsessed with, there's definitely a big chance that it's not, unless it's super well known already, it's possible that it's not something that we've already tried and written about. So there's always an opportunity there, I would say. Just, you know, of course, have a look around the site first and see what we've written about. But other than that, I think the breakdown really is, I've got 2 staff writers who mostly work on evergreen content. So I'm always looking for like freelance essays. And also we have a big pool of stories that need updates that are more reported. Sorry, I think I might have broken up a little bit. We have a big pool of stories that are a bit more reported, like our best in class series. So that is really like expert driven, like vetted product recommendations. For those, I think I'm a bit more discerning on who I might assign those to, just given that they're a bit more technical than usual. But those are also something that I would assign as well, because there's just so many. We have like, it's funny when I search our archives, I'm like, why do we have a story about like, you know, very specific Christmas decorations? So yeah, if there's something you're interested in, I think have a look around the site. There's a good chance we already have something on it, but if it's older, we are always looking to update our content. And other than that, I think, yeah, I'm very open to freelance pitches as well, because, you know, I've got people working on our evergreen stuff, and then for the freelance stuff, I'd really like to have more. And I don't think I can have enough really of just like really surprising, fun, shoppable content.
That's great. I think that's a really good segue in terms of like how you bring on freelancers and how you become like a regular freelancer. Like, do you do a lot of assigning where people, once someone has pitched and maybe written a story for you, do you just assign a lot of things? Like, you're like, hey, this story needs an update. Can you do it?
Yeah. Yeah, I think depending, you know, on how the first go, you know, goes, if it goes well, for sure. And I think I'm always asking freelancers, I think I'd like to work with again, what else they're interested in, because we have just so many product categories, like truly everything. And if there's something in your wheelhouse, we'll most likely have an update for you in the same rubric, if not like other things for you to cover. But yeah, we do have like I have freelancers who frequently pitch me for our celebrity shopping series, because they're in the, you know, on the circuit, and they have a lot of press connect. So that's like a very easy way to be a regular freelancer. And I am actively looking for someone to own our assistant files series. Haven't found the right person yet. So if there's someone here, it might be you, to one, find assistants who want to talk. It seems more difficult than I thought it would be, but even though it's an anonymous series. But yeah, someone to find assistants and to do those interviews and write through the stories. Other than that, I think, yeah, a lot of those just like best in class, very product driven expert recommendations. That's a really good place to start. And I'm always looking for more people to do that. So yeah, I think if it goes well, that's like something that can be an ongoing thing for sure.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on that, like the going well part?
Yeah, I think just like, so the format for our best in class series is quite specific. So I think I'm just looking for someone who can follow directions really for that one, because I get a lot of people who have a go at it and they don't seem to have really looked very thoroughly at past examples, or we have a doc as well that explains step by step how to write those. So it's pretty self-explanatory, but I think honestly it's an exercise in just like following directions. Like truly, like everyone's reporting is great and like sourcing is great. But it's just like we want these to be super vetted and like the quotes to be extra strong and specific. I think getting that level of specificity is something that I don't see a lot. So someone who could do that and like on the first, you know, first pass, do that really well is someone I would love to work with again. And I would keep assigning to for sure.
Those are great tips. Deblina, can you tell a little bit about that? You said you are a little bit discerning when you're bringing on freelancers. So how does that work?
Oh, how do I sort of evaluate a pitch?
And I think one of the questions, I should say, one of the questions I saw in the Q&A was like, what if I don't have like a portfolio with all these clips? Like, is that going to be a problem?
Yeah. That's a good question. So for me, you know, we all get a lot of pitches, I'm sure. For me, I want to see, you know, that somebody has looked at our sections and sort of knows the kind of stuff that we do generally. And this sort of segs into like the last question, which I didn't, I think, do a very good job of answering. But if it's a news story, we probably have that covered. That said, or like a landmark study or something that we have to have done by embargo, say if it's like a science story. But I will also say that those stories, like, don't feel discouraged if you can't do that big news story or that big landmark study or whatever it is, you know, something big around like Met Gala that someone on staff would do, whatever it is for whatever section, because those aren't always the stories that do the best with our audience. Sometimes the very best stories are the ones that, again, are those like unexpected stories, you know, those offbeat ideas that our staff either doesn't have time to do or they're not pitching, you know, they haven't found that particular little nugget yet. So so there's a lot of room to pitch, I think, but the main thing is like understanding what we do as a section. You know, for style, You know, we do cover fashion and fashion shows, but we're not Vogue. For travel, you know, we're not really covering like 5 things to do in Florence. You know, for wellness, it's not really like, you know, health or medical news, because we have a health team that does that. So, you know, just getting familiar, I think, with what kind of stories work if you're interested in a particular section. And then being specific, like, you know, putting in the subject line wellness pitch or whatever, so that I know that it's what it is about, and having the angle or that proposed headline there with it, I think is really helpful for me. And then just like a couple graphs that explain like how you plan to approach the story, and be really clear about what that angle is, because I think a lot of times I get like page-long pitches that, first of all, like I don't necessarily have time to fully go through so many of those, and I can read a whole page and not really know. It's like you've proven to me that you understand the topic, but you haven't told me what you're going to do with the story. And so I'm sort of left like wondering what I'm going to get. And, you know, again, for, you know, a team that doesn't have a lot of time and resources, it's going out on a limb for me then to come out to you, even if I think that you sound knowledgeable, to say, okay, what am I going to get here? Because this could be rounds of edits and stuff if it's, you know, if it's not right. So really being specific about what you plan to do and what your angle is really important. And then a couple graphs, and then a few clips. And I would say, if you don't have a huge portfolio, I mean, I'm not necessarily looking, I think some people probably do look for like really high profile publications like New York Times or whatever as the clips. I think there are editors on our team who do that. I don't necessarily need that. But I do kind of need to see some of your writing samples, just to know that you're able to execute on what you're promising to do. So yeah, I would say 2-3 clips, like whatever you have. It doesn't have to be something super fancy, but it's something that will give me an idea that you're able to do what you're proposing.
Awesome. And I guess for Nikita, how do you, I think it's great that you're expanding your pool of freelancers, and I'm wondering how to become one of those regular freelancers.
Yeah, it's tough because there are so many folks, right? I would agree that when I get pitches, and you know, I've gotten pages and pages, and I get a lot of pitches. I run a desk. I'm very busy. You know, if I see something that long, I might not even read it. Like, to be honest with you, like I'll read you know, I'm like the typical reader of news. I might read those first 3 graphs and be like, okay, so you really gotta grab me. Then with developing folks, I agree that I don't necessarily look for big publications. I am just looking, you know, I'm kind of looking for that it factor, that something different. I hate to even say this out loud, but I actually don't mind the edits. I just want us to be able to get the story where it needs to be. And that might take some time. I mean, I have had stories for several months because I'm like, it's not where we want it to be yet, but we're getting there. And because, you know, I have so many different stories. Let's see, what else can I tell you about that? That's about it. I mean, I could come up with more, but that's pretty much it. I'm not looking for, you know, people who have big clips, because also a lot of times, because there's so much heavy editing at larger news organizations, I don't know if it's really you anyway. I kind of look for the story that you put on a blog or at a smaller publication, because, you know, I know that it's probably just you. And so, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. There's not, a blog is like not going to be heavily edited, so it's a very good example of your work. Tekendra, how does it work for you? How do you become, I think there are questions about how do you get on that email list of yours to get the pitch calls so you can be in the know, for instance? And then how do you become a regular, like what are the factors you look for in terms of becoming a regular freelancer for Insider?
Yeah, so I will link on Twitter to my little Airtable form where you can submit your name, a little bit about yourself and what you do. If what you do matches what we look for, I will then like put you on my email roster and you'll be getting those calls. But like oftentimes I'll get just people that are doing lifestyle journalism or just things that I don't take signing up because they want to hear everything. I usually filter out for those things. So if you are a tech reporter or interested in writing about tech, please use those forms to communicate with me. But again, I think people have said this, but I just want to reiterate it. On my pitch form, there's another form that I use for pitches. I ask to see people's bylines and I say something to the extent of, I rather see bylines in places that you've consistently written, rather than like a single byline at the New York Times or Wired or whatever. And the reason for that is like the same thing as other people have mentioned, but what that tells me is that there is an editor out there, another editor out there who has trusted you on an X number of stories and has liked working with you enough to, commission 5 or 6 or, stories from you. So that's how you can get on my radar, or like the traits I look for to get on my radar. But the way to sort of get on my regular roster is just write for me regularly. Pitch me things that we take, and eventually we will start just working together, and I'll be WhatsApping you like, hey, I have this idea. Do you like it? That's how I do it, at least.
I love it. I think that's, as a freelancer, that makes it almost easier sometimes because you have a lot of ideas, but also sometimes it's great when an editor comes to you and says, I have an idea, are you interested? So awesome. I know we have a lot of questions in the Q&A, so we're going to get to that soon. I think we'll try and do a quick basic stuff that I think we want to try and cover. So one of them is pay. There's always questions about that. So can you share what your rates are? I assume that they might range, so if you can kind of break it down as much as you can, that would be awesome. How does that work? I'll start with Chelsea.
Yes. Okay. So for our This Thing's Incredible essay series, I usually offer 500 for those. And it's just like, a few for usually about 5-6 graphs, but honestly, probably less sometimes, just given how intensely we edit those. And then for our best in class expert vetted product recommendation, very specific series, I do 600 for those. We also have a variation of that called recommended by experts, which is not as structured, but also based on expert recommendations. It's just slightly different. I can get into it more specifically if someone has questions about that. But for those, I usually tend to do 500 because they're just a bit lighter of a lift anyway. And then we have some really small ones as well. Just there's another kind of essay guy called I Can't Stop Buying, which is about just things people buy in multiples, or a type of thing that people really love to buy. We had a cocktail picks one recently. For those, I tend to do 300 because they're just really quick and small. But other than that, assistant files. Yeah, that one I tend to do 500. But again, I'm looking for someone. So it could be a package deal if you're interested. So yeah, those are the main ones.
Awesome. Hopefully there's someone out there here who is
Yeah,
listening
I am
who's I have
looking for someone. Yeah.
Awesome. Deblina, can you talk about CNN's rates?
Yeah, I mean, we don't really have a standard rate right now. That may change in the future. I'm sure a lot of people here have heard that our company went through a merger recently. So I don't know that will stay the same. We don't have a standard rate at the moment because across sections, some writers are asked to do more than others. So the degree of difficulty varies according to the assignment. Some writers also are really into doing their own photo research and stuff. So there's a little more that they're doing, so they might make a little more, but I would say just generally fees can start around $400 for a first-time assignment that's pretty straightforward, and then goes up from there. Some writers who have worked with us a while have negotiated higher rates, and that's because we know that they're good and they always do a great job. They write regularly for us, and that value is there. So it really is kind of, it varies a lot across the board. It's case by case, which isn't great, when we're, doing things like this, where we're sort of trying to communicate to people how much we pay, but it's like that in part just because the projects themselves are so diverse.
Got it. How about for the New York Times, Nikita?
Yeah, it varies based on the degree of difficulty. There's something that, because I approve these payments every week. We have things that are like listings that are as low as $250. Maybe took you a drive-by a house, or a phone call or two. And then of course there are deeply reported cover stories, and it just depends. There's a negotiation, but those generally come out to about $1 a word. And so you can keep that in mind. And then our standing features are anywhere from like 1,000 to 1,200 words, but like, remember the degree of difficulty, so they might pay up a little less, but most of them come out to about $1 a word.
That's good to know. How long are the cover stories usually?
Usually the cover stories are about 1,800, under 2,000. Yeah, under 2,000 words.
Got it.
Occasionally they go over. Yeah, we have a few. Well, there's one today that will be in, it's like 2,200 words, but that's a staff writer. And I'm gonna also note something that I didn't earlier. My first hire was a longtime freelancer. And so that'll let you know. And then my second hire was someone who was a fellow, but had done a freelance story for me that I assigned her, and I hired her. So
that's cool. That's a good way in the door. Tekendra, what are the rates for Insider? I think there are different rates for different types of stories, right?
Yeah, so I think sort of echoing what Deblina said, our rates vary as well for various reasons. I'm not sure how much I can share about what other people at the company are paying, but I'm pretty open about what our rates are on my pitch form. And again, echoing what Deblina said, we started about 450, or I started about 450 for those as told to stories that I mentioned, or anything that is smaller. And again, I would really like to stress that anybody that's new in this room that hasn't written for Insider before, like, try and get in through the path of pitching me as told to stories before you pitch me something bigger. But if you're pitching me a feature like, for reference, I don't take many features from freelancers. I might take one every 3 months. Features to me are like 2,500 words to 3,000 words. We pay $1 a word for those. But yeah, again, the rates vary within that.
Got it. Those are all great opportunities. So the other quick question we have is what kind of contracts you offer. I think as freelancers know, there are different kinds. There's work for hire, there's different rights that you can get, there are different clauses like indemnification clauses, kill fees, that sort of thing. Can you, without going into all those details, can you share a little bit more about what kind of contracts you offer? And I'll start with Tekendra, actually, we'll go backwards.
So I gotta admit that I don't necessarily know the nitty-gritties of our contracts. I do know that we have a separate features contract, and that there are like sort of more amicable rights retentions for that. But in general. I mean, no one's complained about our contracts, but like there's a guy that handles it and it's not me. And I just say, hey, can we send this person a contract? And it happens. So I'm sorry, I don't have much more information than that.
That's okay. Nikita, is that the same for you?
Same. You will, if we decide to do business, I'm like, this is the person who handles the contracts. Here you go. A lot of times, I find there'll be people and they like wrote for us in 1980, whatever, and their contract should be updated, but they're in the system. So, yes, someone works on those with you, and everything is negotiable.
Everything is negotiable. That's always good to know too. Deblina, can you talk about CNN's contract?
I'm coming from the same place as Tekendra. I will fill out, usually when someone comes on with me for the first time, I will just fill out some basic like vendor request paperwork and loop them into that. And then our HR and finance people kind of take it from there. So I don't have a lot of specifics, but I will say, like, if you're writing for CNN in general, like, we're retaining the rights to most of that. We're global, we're across platforms, including TV too. From a journalistic standpoint, we always give people credit for their work. Your name's attached to it and people link to things. But we also have a huge affiliate network. So, you publish something with us, it could end up in affiliate publication. So that's the reasoning behind that.
Got it. And how about for the strategist, Chelsea?
Yeah, definitely same for us as well. And it's mostly something we discuss upon assignment with our lovely managing editor, Kelsey Schrader, who's really good about, just answering any questions. But yeah, I know specifically that we tend to do a work for hire, but we can also send like a licensing agreement as well. Yeah.
Good to know. And then I think we'll do a quick lightning round before we get to some more Q&A from our chat. Can you talk about following up? Can you just give us actually a thumbs up? Follow up? Yes? And then when
wait, let's do that again. I'm going to put you all on gallery view.
Okay. Following up, yes? Thumbs up? Or don't? I'll get to you eventually when I get to you. And then how does it work? Like, should I follow up in 1 week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks? How much space is best for you?
It depends on the story.
Oh, okay. That's true. Like, do you like it when, this is a yes or no, do you like it when people say like, this is timely? Does that help? Yeah.
It's not timely, don't say it's timely, because that's annoying.
That is true.
That's true. And also don't tell me like it's a pitch and I have 48 hours to respond, because then I just definitely won't respond, because again, there's stuff going on. So I probably won't get to it, and we probably won't have time to even onboard you in 48 hours. So that won't work.
Good to know. Well, actually, if you are pitching a story that has a time, like say you're pitching a holiday related story, how far in advance does someone pitch you? I guess we'll do it by weeks. Like, is it like 5 weeks? 4 weeks? Can you hold up a number? No? Maybe this is more
now.
Not
Yeah, wait, for holiday, we've been working on holiday for like ages now. So
Yeah, I would say
that's over.
like,
now.
we're already kind of late,
done.
honestly.
Okay. So no Halloween pitches, and then holiday even, you might be too late. Good to know.
I'm looking for end of year pitches now, like what's happening in tech, like end of year pitches.
Got it. Like 2023 and beyond, practically, right? As we think about that. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. We have a few specific questions, so I'm going to just go directly. So, for instance, Chelsea, there is a question about, can you talk a little bit more about this assistant stories that you're looking for?
Yeah, I'm actually in the process of typing an answer right now, but I'll finish
Oh,
typing
okay.
that and explain it here as well. Yeah, so basically, for pitches for that series in particular, I'm looking for someone who's already one spoken and found an assistant who's willing to go, to be interviewed anonymously. We've also done non-anonymous ones. So it just depending on someone who's willing to talk, basically. And then we always ask for a list of 8 to 10 items with product links that this person would talk about. And this person should have been an assistant in the past 3 years because we want these to be relatively recent. Um, and yeah, I'll just look at the list and like this person's kind of like background to see if they're a good fit. I would have a look through the link I'm about to drop to see if because I want to like have assistants from all different industries. So if it's one type of assistant we've done before, I would, want to space it out. Yeah, and then just moving forward, if we decided they're a good fit, the writer would just go through each item and talk through them to get like the full context behind the ask, behind the boss, requesting this item, and just like how it was used and just like the full story. Like we want all of them to be kind of like mini just like vignettes of like what this product meant to this assistant and their boss. Yeah, that's basically the whole process. I have a doc for that as well, that I share upon assignment.
That's great. Another question we have is how it works in terms of when you're pitching. Do you want to see sources? I know you want a little bit of pre-reporting, but how much detail, I guess, do you want? I'll start with you, Chelsea. I know you said something about pre-reporting. So do you want, for instance, to know all the people that you're going to interview for one of the reporter stories?
Yeah. So for the reported stories, like our best in class ones, I don't necessarily need to see, a ton of sources because I think, if it's like a dermatologist, I'm like, it's unless they're like, a superstar one, I don't think it really matters that much. If they have like professional qualifications. But for we have a series called Ask a Cool Person. So like kind of like an idea of like what types of sources this person would reach out to. Cause I think like we do a lot of style and fashion ones for those. I think I'm always looking for more like unexpected sources for those, not just like the regular like editors or stylists. So I think like some creativity there is also always a plus. Um, and I think for pre-reporting otherwise, for kind of like if you're going to pitch like a trend story, definitely an emerging one, emphasizing that. I think having sources for where you've seen this trend emerging is really important to see, just as a way to gauge if it's already like too out there, which we want to avoid, and just seeing what level of knownness it's at this point. So yeah, I think that's like the level of like sourcing I'd like to see, and just like pre-reporting, like kind of like going back to what I mentioned before, instead of pitching like a question, I'd rather see like the question and like at least part way to the answer. So yeah, I think that's the level I would like to see for me.
And I think I'll skip around a little bit, but to Kendra, how much access should someone have? I know, for instance, with a tech story, like, do you want to know that they have inside contacts, say, at a Facebook, or what are you looking for?
Yeah, so again, depends on the story, but if you're pitching me an as told to and you don't have a subject, you're just like, hey, wouldn't it be cool to like write about, XYZ profession in tech or something? I wouldn't take that. But if you have like, hey, I'm in touch with this Amazon delivery driver that wants to talk about what it's like to be constantly surveilled while doing your job, like that works. For features and things, I usually go into an extensive conversation about sourcing when I commission feature stories. So I'm asking about what kind of access you do. If it's like like a deep investigation in a company, I'll ask about that. I'll ask about documents and other things that you might have access to. I also want to like be upfront that like when it comes to features, we have an extensive fact checking process. So like this is why I try and do as much work up forward, because like I would hate to kill a piece in fact checking after I've spent so much time like sort of drafting and like working on story editing. So yeah, well, like it's good to have a good amount of pre-reporting done, I'd say, but you know, obviously don't write the story until you've pitched it.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Nikita, how does that work for you? Do you want to know that the person already has, say, contacts in real estate, already has like an agent lined up for the hunt? Like how does that work?
Yeah, that's pretty important. You know, because I am a new editor, I've only been an editor since late 2020, you know, and I am easily like, oh my gosh, I love that story. Yes, let's do it. And then, you know, they're into it. And then I'm like, wait, you don't have any sources? Oh, no. So now I'm like, who are you going to talk to? Who do you have lined up to talk to? Because there have been many times when, you know, stories just never came to fruition. I'm like, oh my gosh, that was so juicy. And they actually had absolutely no way that they could do that story, especially when it's something that, you know, is sensitive. It'll be like, oh my gosh, like I couldn't get anyone to talk. And it's like, oh, well, you know, I thought it was going to be great. And actually it's nothing. And so, you know, you kind of want to avoid that, being the person that didn't come through. But, you know, I don't hold that against you. When you pitch me again, I'm like, okay, this one's going to work. So, but yes, I need to know that you have actual sources.
Yeah, I sometimes find it's a little bit chicken and egg because it sometimes helps for me to be able to say, oh, I'm writing a story for this publication. And then they're like, okay, I'll talk to you. Deblina, is that the way? How does it work for CNN? Do you want a pitch with sources in it?
I like to have a sense of who you plan to talk to, at least, even if you don't totally have the person lined up. You know, like if you're pitching a story about a movie that's coming out or a book, you know, have you lined up the author? Do you intend to interview the costume designer? Or, you know, and that goes to the angle, right, which we talked about before. It, you know, when you're getting specific about your angle, it helps me to see that, like, okay, you have really thought this out because you've thought about like how you're going to support that approach that you're taking. It's especially important, I think, with science and wellness stories, just to at least have an idea, because we want to know, and this is like one of the places I think that sometimes things go wrong and like people don't get a second story, is when it's not clear that you know the difference between like a legit source and you know, someone that we wouldn't use. So which is really important when we're doing wellness, because again, we want to make sure that everything is science backed, that we put out there, even if it seems like a lighter story, like, is bread healthy? You know, we want to make sure that we're talking to people who have actually like studied this or who have nutrition chops. So that's important to us, and that can help your pitch, I think, if you show that like you intend to talk to the right people.
That's great. And I know that there are a lot of requests, like, how do we get in touch with you? And I think we will share your email addresses in a follow-up email, or I guess if you can drop a way to contact you. I know Tekendra mentioned that there is an Airtable that people can fill out, and I think Liv has dropped Twitter handles for all of you too to get in touch with you. Do you have a preference for how people pitch you? Do you want to get like 5 pitches in one email? Do you, no. Okay. Nikita, can you answer that first then?
No, I said that earlier, like, you know, if you send me, you know, 3 pages of text, I'm like, I'm not going to make it. So like, you know, 1 or 2 strong pitches at a time would be great.
How about you, Tekendra?
Yeah, so I'd like to be upfront and say, please do not email me a pitch. I know that my Airtable form might look like a slush pile from days of yore, but like really my like email is inundated with PRs that are using like the search term pitch. So like there's no way for me to filter between that. Airtable lets me do that, where the first question is, are you a PR person? If you are, you can't fill in the rest of the form. So pitch me through there, pitch me, I have like, I give you good directions, but pitch me one pitch per submission. And I usually look through those pitches every other morning and send out acceptances or rejections at least by the end of the week. If I haven't by, after 2 weeks, if you aren't pitching anyone else, please just know that I probably wasn't interested and haven't gotten to you in time. So yeah, pitch me through the Airtable form.
How about you, Chelsea?
Definitely the opposite. I love emails. I want more. I'm actively looking for more writers and anyone just who's, got clever stuff to say and like fun products to write about. So yeah, please feel free to email me. I dropped mine into the chat. But yeah, I think in terms of just the cadence of following up, I think I'd like to think I respond quickly. Though I can't say I always give like the most feedback on pitches just because there's not enough, bandwidth to do that extensively. But of course, if you do ask, I'm happy to do that. So I think honestly, if you don't hear back from me, that's weird. So that's my take on that.
How about for you, Deblina? What do you prefer? And actually, one of my follow-up questions for you is like, you oversee a lot of different sections. So if it doesn't work for you, do you forward it to other editors?
Yeah, I will. I think email is good. I do get a ton of email. I mean, just like internal and external and the PR stuff and everything. So don't be surprised if you don't hear back from me right away, but I also don't mind follow-ups. Like that does not irritate me as long as it's not multiple times a week. If you follow up in like, 1, 2, 3 weeks or whatever, then, and you're not like been out of shape about it, then I'm all good. I tend to look at pitches and things like that and talk about and think about upcoming stories more like beginning of a week, end of a week, because middle of the week sometimes just turns into a huge trash fire with like news and other things. So that's a thing too. But yeah, I mean, email's probably the best way right now, although really I'm like eyeballing Tekendra's method and think that looks pretty awesome. So yeah, that's the best way. Just like, don't be surprised if you don't hear back from me right away. It's not because I hate you. It's just because I haven't gotten to it yet and I'm drowning. But I will. And I think doing the things that we talked about, like being really specific, not being too long, all of those kind of things will make it easier, to hear back from me.
And do you prefer one pitch per email or do you prefer multiple pitches?
Oh yeah. One pitch per email if I haven't worked with you yet. I do have some freelancers who work with me often who will send me like, I have 2 or 3 things, and they'll have them all kind of there and I can look at them and we can discuss them all, and that works at that stage. But if I haven't worked with you yet and I don't know you, please 1 per email.
Got it. And I think all of you have kind of talked about this already, but can we just run through word count for your different stories? For CNN, like how long are most of these stories?
So it's again, like everything, it's a range. It's I think it can start like around 500 to 700 words, but it can go up to like 1,100 words. We usually, unless it's a big feature or something, we don't with freelancers go much over that. I mean, we all know digital audiences, they don't have a lot of stamina to read super long stories and scroll depending on the topic. Obviously they will if the topic is something that they're super engaged in. So it's not like that'll never happen that it's not longer than that, but generally that's where it caps out.
And Nikita, I think you talked a little bit about that too in terms of cover versus the hunt, but can you walk through a few of the sections and what the lengths are?
Yeah, I mean, most are like 1,000, 1,200, 1,500, and then you start getting into cover story territory. We do have other things like there are just other stories that don't necessarily, that are maybe 1,000 words, but really took like 500 words worth of effort, just because of the way it's formatted, etc. And then, like I said, we have these listings that are like 250, although some of those are going to be phased out. So yeah, if we start working together, you'll get the lay of the land. Like I said, just take a look at the New York Times real estate section online, and you'll get an idea of all the different features.
Great. And the Tekendra, you already mentioned, I know that like features are much longer. The as told to sound like they're, what was it? I think, can you walk through that again?
Yeah, so as told to stories are these like single interview, single subject stories that are written from the perspective of whoever that subject is. They can come in various forms, from like job diaries to sort of takes on specific issues going on from, that subject's perspective. They usually come in at about 800 words. They might extend further out than that if it's like a particularly extensive as told to story, but we generally pay a flat rate of around $450 for those stories. Does that
Yeah. I think we were just trying to think about like, oh, what's the scope of some of these stories? And I think because for Chelsea, for the different sections, you have many different word counts, right?
Yeah, so I would say like the essay ones are usually about 500 to 600 words, usually somewhere in the middle. The rate for that is usually 500. For the longer reported expert recommendations ones, like our best in class, those can be up to 1,000, just because there's so many products in there. I'm like 10 products and like having to explain each one and why they're good. And then assistant files are usually about like 700 words, but a lot of those are quotes. So because it's just like the interview series.
And I think a quick question for Deblina is, for travel stories, is there a separate travel budget?
Meaning like financial budget? Yeah. Like I said, I think all sections they sort of have their own like way that they manage their budget. It all, I think, goes back to the same thing. That's a little fuzzy to me as well, but yeah, they manage their budget separate. All the sections manage their budget separately. If that makes sense.
It does make sense. And I know we're winding down a little bit, but I think my last question is a twofer. Can you talk about if there's anything that's an automatic no, and also if there's anything that's an automatic yes? I'll start with Tekendra.
In terms of pitches, there are no automatic yeses, but automatic no's would be like if if there is a conflict of interest and, it seems apparent, like maybe you're maybe you're going on a press trip with, XYZ company or something to that extent, where like where your financial interests aren't objectively aligned with reporting on those companies. That's an automatic no. I'll probably not respond to those emails, or pitches. But yeah, otherwise, really no automatic yeses either.
Got it. How about for you, Nikita? Is there anything that's an automatic yes or no, or anything that stands out for you?
No automatic yeses, although like the standouts are just things I haven't read somewhere else, or things that, just make me look at a subject differently. I'm very into ugly being pretty. So send me those. And then for automatic no's, agreed, conflicts of interest. Also, when someone sends me a pitch, particularly because I am new to the real estate section, but the editors I work with are not and have been around a long time. They might have received pitches from you, and they They have reasons. They're like, oh no. Let me tell you. They'll be like, let me tell you why this is a great person to work with. Let me tell you why it didn't quite work out. And that doesn't mean that doesn't mean automatic no, but that means a pause and maybe, why didn't that story 5 years ago work out? Can we talk to make sure that, that mistake isn't made again?
That's good to know too. How about for you, Deblina?
Conflicts of interest, a big one for automatic no's. I think that also just anything that's like clearly you didn't look at our section, or something just like, we've already talked about this, but something just very obviously overly general, like I want to write about this movie, or I think I can get the director for this movie. Do you want it? Is probably not going to, again, that specific angle needs to be there. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a range when it comes to automatic yeses. There's no automatic yes, really. There's just a range when it comes there. And specificity is always good. The unexpected, like I said before, surprising me is always good. Don't do like, we don't do just there's this art exhibit opening. I really want to, I want to find a specific angle on what is the content of that art exhibit? Why is our audience going to be interested in it? Again, thinking about CNN's audience. And if you show you've done that, then you're one step closer to winning me over.
That's good to know too. We have another lightning round question. People want to know about simultaneous pitches. So if I sent an email to Deblina and Nikita and Tekendra and Chelsea at the same time, is that a yes or no?
Definitely a yes. I respect the hustle.
How about for you, Deblina? You look like you have an opinion.
I think it depends on what it is. And I hate to always, I feel like I keep giving that answer. It depends on like what the story is. But in general, like, yeah, I don't have a problem if you're also pitching other publications, as long as you let me know that, so I don't go, if I read it a week later and I'm like, yeah, I want that. And you're like, sorry, it's gone. Then I'm like, okay, I wish I had known 3 days ago that I should have responded to that message. So yeah, just let me know that you're pitching other people, and that helps.
Okay. How about for you, Nikita? What if someone pitches you and say like the Wall Street Journal home section at the same time?
I'm less irritated by, while I'm disappointed when a freelancer does that, I'm more annoyed when like agents do that with an exclusive. And I'm like, come on, man. So that's more annoying. But like Deblina was saying, I don't like when people are like, you have 24 hours to respond or I'm going to this other publication. I'm like, okay. A lot of times I'm like, all right, bye. So, because I just can't work like that unless it's like some breaking news. And that's kind of rare in real estate. So.
How about for you, Chelsea? Simultaneous pitches? Is it okay? I really love this product. I need to write about it somewhere.
Yeah. I like to think that, we have a quite specific point of view that a writer is, definitely like tailoring their pitch for. So, though I get it, everyone's trying to sell stuff these days, but I like to think that, yeah, like a writer would look at our site specifically and know in their pitch what to include to like make this like a good fit for the strategist in particular. But yeah, I do respect the hustle. So if it's if you're pitching multiple places that also happen to sell stuff, which is like everybody these days, yeah, just some transparency there is good as well, just so I know how quickly I need to say yes or no.
Awesome. And I know that we're getting close to the end. So thank you so much for your time and for sharing all these inside tips for freelancers. I hope you get a lot of amazing pitches. Katherine, do you want to say anything? as we close out?
Yes, just another huge thank you for being so generous with your time. I think what always comes out of these webinars is that editors are human too, and that they're not just this faceless end of the email. So thanks to all four of you for being here. Everyone, please join us for our next two webinars in this series. On Friday, November 11th, we'll be talking about making long form journalism work financially and from a workflow process. And we have amazing speakers whom I really admire: Valeria Fernandez, managing editor of Palabra; Jaya Lee, contributing writer at the New York Times Magazine; Erica Hayasaki, whose brand new book, Somewhere Sister, was just published; and Lottie Joyner, who's actually just joined Verite, an in-depth project in New Orleans, and she's going to be focusing on long form editing. So please come at 1 p.m. We're going to be 1 hour later because 3 of our speakers are on the West Coast. And then on December 9th at 12 p.m., we will be talking about how to land a fellowship to try to get funding for the travel or the pre-reporting or all the other expenses that we've talked about today. So please mark your calendar for that. And then in January, we'll be figuring out the next session. So again, on behalf of the Institute for Independent Journalists, huge thank you to everyone who is here today, but especially our speakers, Ellen, Deblina, Chelsea, Nikita, and Tekendra. Thank you so much for your time and your generosity. And we hope that this improves everyone's work life and journalism going forward. So have a great afternoon.
Thank you.